Let us all please welcome the General Manager for Health, Safety, and the Environment, Prithipal Singh.
Thank you, Rico. Good day, everyone. First of all, let me congratulate OPITO on successfully organizing its 8th Safety and Competence Conference, and it's the second time in Kuala Lumpur you're organizing this, so congratulations again on a well-crafted event. I'm going to change the gears here a little bit so far on what you've heard, and maybe bring it a bit closer to home, and talk a little bit about where we are today in terms of safety performance, and I'll talk a bit about Malaysia and how we're doing, and then a little bit about what we're trying to do to stay relevant. And I think the quote from Ryan earlier this morning, you know, this is how we done it mindset is a slippery slope to irrelevance, really rings a bell. And so maybe I'll share a little bit about what we're trying to do to stay current, and it's specifically around focusing on some of our competencies for our staff around behavioral safety. But before I go further, there's a bit of an eye test to make sure you're paying attention. So don't use anything I say to you today as a basis for making any of your investment decisions. Yeah. Now, a bit about Shell in Malaysia. There are 5 businesses, 5 main businesses in Malaysia. The most prevalent one are all the retail stations. So we have over 900 retail stations in Malaysia. We have a gas to liquid. Actually, the pioneering gas to liquid plant was actually built in Bintulu. We are partners in the liquefied natural gas business also in Bintulu. We have a very big business services center in Cyberjaya, which is not very far from here, that serves the rest of the Shell group. And clearly, we also run the Upstream business, which produces close to 200,000 barrels of oil per day. And we're also in the gas business in Sarawak. So Malaysia is really a Shell heartland. Yeah? You've got basically all of our big businesses running in country, and the Upstream business is now in its 126th year in the country. So very long legacy of working with the governments and the people and the states in Malaysia. And what is in common with all these businesses is basically our commitment to doing things safely, to ensuring that we are really partnering with the local governments, with the local businesses, we're good neighbors, and that we're good stewards for everything that we do. And that's underpinned by our commitment from the very top, so leadership commitment. That's underpinned by a single control framework, a single set of standards of how we will operate wherever we operate, anywhere across the globe, and the life-saving rules, which I will touch on in a minute. So how are we doing, having said that? Yeah, so this is Shell Malaysia's Upstream safety performance. This is about 30 years of data. A couple of things just to give you a feel. So the background is our man hours, and this is man hours that encompass all of our Upstream operations. So this includes the man hours for offshore operations. This includes drilling. This includes fabrication yards. This includes offices. It includes 5,000 flights that we have every year, roughly, using 2015, 2016 data. 5,000 flights, 800,000 kilometers traveled on the roads. We operate about 35 marine vessels at any point, 3,500 staff or so. So it's a fairly big operations, it's a fairly big set of man-hour data. It's coming from various sources. And what you can see there is clearly a very clear trend. So if you look at the dark red line, very clear trend of how over time our recordable case frequency has improved. And basically, if you look at, in the late or the early 90s, if you take a TRCF of about 4 on average, and about 15 million man-hours. So we were injuring about 60 people a year. Yeah? And if you look at where we are today, our TRCF is about 0.5, and we're doing about, last year, about 20 million man-hours. So we're roughly injuring about 10 people a year. So it's been a dramatic change in terms of how the industry is doing and how we're doing as a company. The other thing to notice is there's been a very big shift in the data around 2009. And I think this is a very good proxy for industry data as well, because if you look at the IOGP data, it's got a very similar kink almost in the performance, which is around 2009. And I don't know if you can guess what that was. Do you know what happened in 2009, what that event was? No, it was when the life-saving rules were introduced. Yeah? So the life-saving rules are 12 rules that globally we believe you have to follow, and we will put in place systems and processes to make sure you follow. And when we rolled it out, we even went as far as saying that if you choose to break the rules, you choose not to work for Shell. Yeah? And you can see the impact it's had. It's made a dramatic impact on our performance. And if you look at globally at the data now, not just Malaysia, but Shell data globally, then when I joined Shell, which is around 2002, we were killing a person a week. Can you believe that? One person a week. And last year, sadly, 3 people did not get to go home, which is not good enough. And we believe in Goal Zero, and everybody should go home, have the right to go home safely. But there's been a dramatic improvement, And so the life-saving rules are saving lives, and you can just see that. You can see that change of when it's been introduced and what it's done for us. And you can also look at this as a proxy for the industry. So the question is, do we need to do more? Is this enough? Yeah. And so let me offer up another way of looking at this. So if you think about an iceberg, and you look at the data I just presented, then you may wonder, why are we all here today, and what more do we do as an industry? But you've also heard earlier in the day the challenges that we're under, various challenges, and the times keep changing. And underneath this iceberg, what we continue to see are things that deeply concern us. Yeah? If I pick a couple, loss of containment trends that continue to increase over time, cost pressure. So the cost is coming out. A lot of us say that they see the cost coming out, but what is the impact to the people at the front line? And when will we see that impact? Yeah? We continue to see incidents around road safety. Yeah? By the way, most of our incidents in the last few years, with the exception of one, are all road safety related. Yeah? So clearly we're not making enough improvements in that space. We continue to see incidents which are repeat incidents which we fail to learn as an industry. They still continue to occur. We still continue to see incidents that are related to lifting and hoisting, something that we've done so much on, and over the years matured so many different training standards. But every now and then you still come across incidents related to this. And we know that as you see these incidents, and they're not always reaching their potential, you do ask yourselves whether we are actually on the right journey towards Goal Zero or not. Because you are constantly humbled by the fact that our safety performance is actually very fragile. Yeah? So if you then think about, and if I now put this through a different lens, and you look at then all those incidents that have occurred, and you analyze why did these incidents occur, and you'll see that most of these incidents occur not because there was a lack of processes or there was a lack of structure or the organization was not in place or there was inadequate training. But what you'll find is usually it was around attitudes, it was around behaviors at a site, and it was around values. Yet, when you then contrast that to what we do, after incidents. We spend most of our time on structures, on processes, and very little time around the attitudes, the behavior, the culture at the work site. And so there is clearly a disconnect. And I can tell you, a short story of an incident where someone hurt their finger because a lifting operation went wrong and a cylinder that was supposed to be tied down fell. And it fell on his finger because he was putting his hand on the load where he shouldn't have, which he shouldn't have been doing in the first place. And the first recommendation in that incident review panel was put a signboard up that says no hand on load. The second recommendation was revise the lifting and hoisting procedure. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And somewhere at the very end, there was something around, let's have a conversation around how we do this job safely. So it is prevalent. It is something that we are not very good at, and it's something that we need to focus on. Yeah? And, most recently, our CEO has even come up with a statement that we just cannot simply engineer our way to goal zero. You've seen the data. You've seen that we are at a plateau for the last 7 or 8 years in Malaysia. But more engineering, more processes is not going to do it. It's not going to take us to zero. And we need to change the way we behave. And that's the only way that we can make a difference. So what does that mean? Behave, change the way we behave. So let me offer up perhaps what are traits of what we call a safety leader. So in Shell, and from last year, for those of you who were here, Simon Durkin spoke about the safety leadership in Shell. And let me offer up a bit of what are the traits of a good safety leader. Yeah. So this is all about, people who have a deep respect and care for one another. This is about being vulnerable, knowing to say that sometimes you don't have the right answer. This is about being a partner to your contractors, partner to your stakeholders, creating a language that allows people to speak up, opening honest dialogue, allowing dilemmas to come to surface, paying attention to the weak signals. It's about being meticulous about what you say, what I say. What does that mean? Sometimes that's discipline. Sometimes that's just, there's a way we do things, and I expect you to do it by the way the book says we're supposed to do things. Welcoming feedback, but at the same time, coaching. Yeah. Recognition. Yeah. Recognizing positive safety leaders, good behaviors, but at the same time also calling out behavior and creating basically the visibility for yourself, for the people, for the leaders in the organization at the front line. Listening, engaging, taking personal action, following through, including people at out-of-sight locations, because we do have a lot of our operations in places which many of us don't even know we operate in. Workshops, facilities, marine vessels that are in far-flung locations that don't always get the attention that some of our bigger sites do. So why do I put this here, and what has this got to do with behavioral safety? So I pause here and ask you to reflect. If this is what we want, then what are we doing with the safety and environment workforce that we have today that enables them to role model and coach the organization, to lead them in the direction that we want? Yeah? So if you think about it, and that's again coming back to the plot I showed you around our performance data, we've moved as an organization, I would say we've moved as an industry from compliance to commitment, and I think we're now in a space where we want people to do the right things for themselves. We're moving away from a world where it is all about compliance, because you know that you can build, you can write the most perfect procedures, you can write the most comprehensive set of standards, but you could still have a site which has got abysmal safety performance if there just isn't the right culture and behaviors at the site. And so we're on this journey, and the next kind of battlefront, so to speak, is around how do we change behaviors. And part of doing that is how do we equip our own workforce, the safety and environment professional of tomorrow, with these kind of skills. Yeah? And we call these soft skills, and they're predicated on building proficiency beyond just the regular HSSE functional competencies that our staff and our workforce have to have today. And so there are 4 main soft skill competencies that we are targeting. The first one is on business partnering. This is about how do you build effective trust with your stakeholders. Change management. We've spoken about the level of change that is occurring, and in fact, many of you say that change is the only constant. So how do you effectively support change? We've talked about intervention and facilitation. How do you get people to collaborate effectively? How do you facilitate an event in a manner that allows people to speak freely? Yeah? And then it's about leadership and coaching. How do you get people to realize for themselves what is it that they need to do, and realize that as opposed to being told, but come up with those insights on their own. Yeah? Because we all know, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this. You can go into a room and in a meeting, and you can talk about why safety is important, and you'll have everyone nodding. Nobody wants anyone to get hurt. But all that goodwill is not adequate. It's inadequate for you to change what's happening out there. And so sometimes we do need to be able to transcend, how do you get that goodwill, that intention into actions? And how do you make that part of your day-to-day routine? Yeah? And ultimately, and the last one is around coaching for safety leadership coaching. And this is then helping, again, leaders and our frontline staff realize what they need to do to close the gap around their own behaviors so that they'll all be good safety leaders. So let me speak a little bit about business partnering. Well, sorry, before I go to that. So behind each of these engagements, behind each of these areas, there is a bit of a framework for what we cover. So there are models, there are tools that I won't speak about. But essentially, this is taking our workforce and reskilling them and giving them basically a wider set of tools that they can use in their day-to-day job. And I'm just going to pick on business partnering because it's quite close to heart. And business partnering is an interesting one because many of us fall into one of these 4 brackets, yet we don't realize it. Yeah? So if you look at the vertical axis, are you as a safety and environment professional a business player where you co-own business delivery, where you co-own the results from the business, where you have a seat and equal